Welcome to the third episode of AfroLeap 21 podcast. This podcast focuses on technology and transformational leapfrogging, which are of critical importance for Africa's development in the 21st century. To start with the role of technology in socio-economic transformation, innovation and technology was central in social transitions since the discovery of fire and the production of the first hand tools, followed by the farming that led to sedentary settlements. However, it was the Industrial Revolution that started in the 18th century, which had significantly redefined human agency and its relationship with nature. There are various classifications of industrial revolution over the last 3 centuries. Martin Schwab and his colleagues in 2019 classifies the industrial revolution we had until the 20th century in 3 stages. That is the first industrial revolution that's characterized by the discovery of coal and development of steam engine, which led to various mechanization practices, both within the agricultural system and particularly the industrial processing system, starting from the textile processing. And then this is followed by the second industrial revolution that is characterized by the power of electricity and transportation technologies and communications, which started to gain pace towards the end of the 19th century. Then comes the third industrial revolution, which is characterized by the development of information and communication technologies and digital computing. Essentially, when we look at it from thermodynamic perspective, every human activity in relation to economic transformation is based on the processing of material, energy, and information. Even within these 3 industrial revolution stages, you see the emphasis moving from material to energy, and then from energy to information. And with the development of information and communication technologies, the pace of industrialization and globalization increased significantly, thereby changing the relationship we had with the natural environment. Entered into the 21st century with the advent of fourth industrial revolution that is characterized by new technologies that ushered the fourth industrial revolution and which are expected to have very wide-ranging impacts. This includes emerging disruptive technologies, including artificial intelligence. And we are expecting that this will redefine again our relationship with one another and the natural environment also. While technological innovation comes with new opportunities, the misguided deployment of disruptive technologies could further lead to more complex challenge. Historically, all of the technological innovations have brought a number of benefits, societal benefits, both in terms of improving productivity and the living standard of increasing number of people. But at the same time, it has also led to undesirable outcomes, particularly in relation to the deployment of the technologies. Overall, the global community has entered another major transformational moment that would have impacts of tectonic proportion on humanity. Both agricultural and industrial transformation have brought significant impact and changed the direction of the human economic system in a significant way. But what we are expecting to see as a result of the fourth industrial revolution is quite different, both in terms of impact in human society and our relationship with nature. If you wish to have a better understanding of how this significance is real, it will be good to look into the book titled Power and Progress, published by the 2024 Nobel Economic Prize winners, which looked at the broad range of effect of technology on progress and prosperity over the last 1,000 years. Some of the key conclusions they have made is that the 340 years that have passed have seen far more scientific change than all the previous 5,000 years. Now, the exponential impact of the disruptive technologies such as artificial intelligence and robotics would significantly dwarf the impact of the preceding 3.5 centuries. Because of the exponential impact of the disruptive technologies is much, much higher than what we have seen over the last 3.5 centuries. Historically, the skewed nature of the deployment of new technologies has always led to concentration of power and profit in the hands of the few. This is again one of the major conclusions they made based on their analysis. Although every new technological innovation introduced has contributed to the improvement of productivity, in a much larger way, it has contributed to the concentration of power and profit because of the nature of the deployment of the technologies and the socio-economic and institutional structure around it. And looking back at what has happened over the many centuries of human history and considering what is happening today, the vision of almost inexorable benefits from new technology, including intelligent machines led by the so-called talented entrepreneurs, is an AI illusion. Unless we look into the detail of how it is deployed and how it is utilized, technology by itself will not lead to better outcome for the whole humanity. So essentially, if we look at technology and human agency relationship, technology has continuously redefined human agency besides productivity improvement. Over the centuries, always whenever a new technology comes forward, it improved productivity by enhancing human agency within a given socio-economic system. But it was also highly instrumental for consolidation of profit and power. So the current deterministic deployment of disruptive technologies is replacing rather than redefining human agency. This is an important distinction that we have to recognize. Throughout human history, most of the technologies introduced through various innovation mechanisms have enhanced human agency. Of course, jobs are redefined in different ways, but it enhanced the capacity of human beings to do a job more effectively and efficiently. But the current trend of introducing artificial intelligence and robotics without any consideration of its possible adverse impacts on society will result in not redefining human agency, but in replacing human agency. This is where the critical difference is. Struggle for having the upper hand of the concentration of profit and power is approaching its peak between the major frontier technology companies and countries. There are about 5 or 6 major corporate companies that are at the forefront of development and deployment of artificial intelligence and related technologies, which are controlling the overall market to a large extent when it comes to private companies. But there is another dimension of competition that is going on between the US and China, which have completely different kind of approach when it comes to development and deployment of AI and related technologies. So this competition is now gaining pace very fast, and nobody knows where it will lead as we stand today. But there are two kind of perspective on this. There are the utopianists, which are holding the edge of abundance, where no one needs to work and every citizen will receive a universal basic income. This is the utopianist kind of presentation of how things will be unfolding in the coming years as these AI and related technologies are fast being deployed across economic sectors. More and more people will be pushed out of job, but productivity will increase significantly. leading to high amount of wealth, which can then be distributed through universal basic income distribution mechanism. Nobody knows as to how that would work, but this is the kind of a simplistic solution that is being promoted by the techno oligarchs in terms of addressing the adverse impact of the fast deployment of AI and its related technologies. And there is the dystopian kind of perspective, which is portraying more scary consequences and socio-economic impacts of the so-called liberating deployment of agentic AI and robotics. And this includes the rise of autocrats by utilizing these technologies for mass surveillance and so on. And it also includes application or utilization of these technologies for having global domination. This is all besides the effect on jobs and workers' life because of this application of these technologies. But on all sides, there is a growing concern about the lack of preparedness at national and global level to introduce efficient governance of the deployment of disruptive technologies. So we are standing at a very critical moment where the technology is evolving in a very, very fast way, and it's also being deployed without any guardrail and without any regulatory mechanism that ensures that human security or human well-being is protected on the one hand, and on the other hand, both national governments and even global governance systems are not yet prepared to handle this emerging challenge. So there is this disconnect between what is happening and what needs to happen in terms of making sure that society benefits from these new developments. The concern about this kind of disconnect has been on the agenda for quite some time. There have been a number of attempts to highlight this even as early as the early decade of the 20th century. Here I have highlighted one example in which I participated. This is a UN system-wide publication that was prepared as an input for the Rio Plus 20 summit that was held in 2012. And one of the chapter, which I served as a lead author, was focused on innovation and technology. And we indicated in that report that the success of newly developed technologies has often been determined by the institutional and socio-economic structures that affect both the rate and direction of technological change in society. And we underline the importance of promoting social innovation in tandem with technological innovation. We recognize that the technological innovation sphere is moving very fast, while the necessary social innovation was lagging behind. And that is where the problem is. Unless technological innovation is accompanied with the relevant social innovation by way of creating the necessary institutional mechanism and the deployment steps with the necessary guardrails, will be ending up under the mercy of the technology, which nobody knows where it will lead us. More recently, in 2019, we published this book together with my friend and colleague, Professor Mark Swilling, in which we looked at the various challenges we are facing today and how Africa should prepare itself. And in this book, the chapter 7 focused on distributed renewable economy for Africa, which indicated that the battle is already on between the conventional groups that are bent on making the maximum profit and power consolidation out of the emerging disruptive technologies, and the advocates for the transformational utility of these technologies for the broader and higher benefit of humanity. So even at that time, looking at the trend, how the blockchain technology, artificial intelligence are evolving and being utilized at various levels, we already saw the danger and indicated that there is an important issue to consider when it comes to making the best out of these evolving technologies for the benefit of humanity. So that is where we brought in the transformational leapfrogging topic. In the same publication, there is another chapter that focuses on transformational leapfrogging. Basically, leapfrogging is more of a natural part of technology diffusion from developed to developing economies and frontiers. It has been happening for centuries. Technology is moving from one area where it has developed and matured to another area where conditions allow to transplant them. And this kind of leapfrogging manifests itself in various areas. And just a simple example is the move from landline telephony to mobile telephony, which has happened with the development of mobile technology across the developing world, is a typical example of leapfrogging that is driven by technological innovation. But presence of a well-thought, efficient technology regimes that ensure effective utilization of technologies is a function of the human and institutional capacities of the respective countries. So it's not about looking at the technology only, but you have to look at the technological regimes that are required to have an effective and efficient utilization of that technology. In this regard, I think the Asian countries, including China, have done very well by way of taking the existing innovations out there and passing them through their own technological regimes that will enable them to build their national capacity and come up with their own version of technology, which are becoming more competitive with the original technologies that have been developed in the Western hemisphere. So technology regimes that includes the required human and institutional capacities and frameworks are a critical element of a successful utilization of the technological innovation that are coming from anywhere. Most African countries have experienced the mix of blind and incidental leapfrogging that are more supply driven since independence. Unfortunately, most African countries lack these proper technology regimes that will enable them to make the best use of the technologies that are being made available. There is a very limited element of knowledge transfer, capacity transfer, which promotes further dependency on other countries' capacity. So in that regard, what Africa needs is more transformational leapfrogging that is context relevant and demand driven, and that capitalize on the dynamic creativity of its use. We'll look into this in detail here. The blind leapfrogging was more total submission, uprooting local knowledge systems, and by its very nature is very much extractive. Most of the technologies that came to the African continent were aimed at achieving maximum extraction of resource. It's not about adding value, it's not about developing those countries, and this is more a continuation of the colonial era. And then comes the incidental leapfrogging, which was transfer of technology in a more supply-driven way. It's more about transplanting alien models rather than giving them the foundation. And it's more growth-centered, GDP-driven kind of growth. At best, that is what it could achieve, which has a very limited developmental impact on African countries. But now what we are advocating for is more transformational leapfrogging that is supported with its own technological regimes that are demand-driven, context-relevant, and well-being centered. It's focused on improving the well-being of people. That is the priority goal. Of course, within that, you have the need to grow your economy, but that has to be also contextualized and be responsive to the specific needs and demands that we have within the continent. And we need to have some systemic transitions, both at global and continental level. At global level, we need to develop an effective global socio-technological governance regimes by coupling the fast pace of technological innovation with an equally robust social innovation through key stakeholder participation. This is the kind of thing that needs to be led by the multilateral institutions, including the United Nations, in close collaboration with the private sector and other stakeholders, which are critical for the transition we would like to have. And we need to strongly advocate for shifting the strategic focus of the development and deployment of AI-related technologies from profit and power to human ecosystems well-being focused. If these technologies do not serve to improve the well-being of people and the ecosystem well-being, which is very much critical for the improvement of human well-being, will not be able to achieve a positive outcome from it. This is where the danger zone is. Whether utopian or dystopian or whatever, they are going to be defined by how they are being deployed, to what target are they serving, where is the focus, and what needs to be done to reorient them in such a way that it provides benefit to the majority of the people. In addition to those global considerations, we need to have continental consideration. We need to promote systematic assessment of frontier technology preparedness of countries and define key priorities, areas of focus. Most of the African countries are still moving in the blind zone without knowing what is coming, what we have, what should we do, and so on. So this kind of systematic assessment of frontier technology preparedness is a very critical starting point for any African country to know where it is and identify the key areas of action that it needs to focus on. And this could fit into the process of developing and implementing a national AI strategy and action plan with a particular focus on building the required skill sets and institutional setups. And that needs to be supported by development of national, sub-regional, continental data centers that could ensure data sovereignty and serve as a backbone for transformational leapfrogging. Already the fight is moving on. Global companies are having more and more control on the information that is being collected from citizens across the globe. And there is already a discussion of, building a lot of data centers across the different part of the continent. And even some of them are considering to have space-based data centers because the resistance for building data centers is growing because data centers are very much resource consuming. They consume a lot of energy. They consume a lot of water also for the cooling purposes. Besides the land it requires and the other resources it requires. So the issue of data sovereignty is becoming a key element for which African countries need to be prepared. And we need to introduce the required reforms in universities and promote technology innovation and incubation centers and startup support centers across Africa. This has to be carried out with the active involvement of universities and private sectors, enterprises, to facilitate this process because we need to have a different kind of skill sets for our young generations to be prepared to, to make the best use of the technologies that are evolving. While these are things that could be done in the public sector, one exception which I have observed from all the discussion that is happening around the multinational companies and the major players in this disruptive technologies area is the idea promoted by the founder of Anthropic. And they published in 2024 an essay which is serving as a basis for their company's engagement in the development and deployment of AI-related technologies. And he underlines that most people are underestimating how radical the upside of AI could be just as they are underestimating how bad the risks could be. So he recognized the significant benefit that could come out of AI, but also the possible risks that is related to the way we are deploying and utilizing these technologies. So we need to be aware of both sides if you want to make progress towards a more efficient utilization of these technologies. And he also indicates that it is dangerous to view companies as unilaterally shaping the world and dangerous to view practical technological goals in essentially religious terms, because some of the discussion has sort of moved towards promoting these technologies as inevitable and more happening whether we like it or not. It's not like that. Technologies are creation of human beings, and it is the human agency that is critical in terms of how these technologies will evolve and be implemented. So this is a very dangerous attitude coming from any direction, and we need to deal with that. And also he underlines that everyone, including AI companies, will need to do their part, both to prevent risks and to fully realize the benefits. So all of us need to be aware about both the benefits and the risks and introduce the right type of socio-technological governance mechanism that will allow us to reduce the risk and maximize the benefit. And it is possible to do that, both at the global level and at the country level. And in that process, culture's values, he calls it culture's values, which I call the social innovation dimension, are a winning strategy because they are the sum of a million small decisions that have clear moral force and that tend to pull everyone together onto the same side. So this is the kind of social innovation we need to promote and advocate for. Technological innovation is very important for improvement of human well-being, but its outcome is very much dependent on how we deploy and utilize it. That would require a lot of social innovation, and that is where having the right kind of socio-technological governance regime, whether it is at a global level or a country level or at any level, even at a company level, is very, very critical. Those companies which give recognition for this, the social innovation dimension, as much as they focus on the technological innovation dimension, will be the ones which will be successful at the end of the day. So we need to consider both these dimensions in a more systematic way. Most important thing is we need to look at the technological innovation with its all benefits and risks and the importance of having the right type of socio-technological governance regime in order to maximize the benefit and reduce the risks. If we do that, the emerging technologies and innovation will contribute to both improvement of human well-being and ecosystem well-being, which are very much interdependent on one another. With that, we conclude this episode. We request you to continue subscribing and sharing the AfroLib 21 link within your networks and contacts. Thank you very much.